Okay, guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky. Got a very special guest tonight. We have got Gina Black from She
Hi.
Haunts. How are you? Welcome to Let's Get Freaky.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I've been following you on Instagram for a while. So I was saying before, I feel like I know you already. That's a bit weird.
Hey, but that's what's great about social media. We make
Yeah,
friends all over.
yeah. You got a big following on social media. That's for sure. She Haunts. Are you across? I'll follow you on Instagram. Are you on Facebook, TikTok? Are you on all of them?
I'm on TikTok as well. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on TikTok and I go on there occasionally, but it's one of those apps that I've had so many issues with the whole platform that I tend to stick with my Instagram friends.
Yeah.
So,
Instagram's the best. I think
yeah,
that's the best one. I'm on all of them, but Instagram's the main one. I think that's where you meet your real tribe.
I agree. Yeah.
So what part of the US are you based in?
So I am just outside of Miami, Florida.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you get the nice weather there most of the time.
Yeah, we do get nice weather. We also get really, hot, humid months too. And,
Yeah.
our winters are really pretty because it's very mild winter here. And, we kind of we live for the couple of months, of winter time. It's optimum here. A lot of people vacation here during the winter. So
Hmm.
we're getting into that weather right about now. It's starting to get a little cooler. So
Oh, do you have to wear a coat?
exciting.
Get the jumpers out or not?
Once in a while, it will get a little cold where we need to wear coats, but nothing heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. You always have to wear a coat in the UK, even
Oh,
during the
I
summer.
know. I was there during the summer and it was really
Oh
cold on
wow.
some days. Yeah.
What part of the UK was you at?
So I traveled to London and then we did a little 2-day trip to Paris and we went back to London. We rented a car and we did this little roundabout. We went up to Nottingham and we did the Cotswolds. Then we
Oh
went
wow.
through Bristol. We did the Stonehenge and then back to London for a few more days before we left. And it was an incredible
Wow.
trip. I did so many spooky things over there and I love that place.
Oh,
So,
that's you've seen more of the UK than I have. I'm near Stonehenge. I'm not far from Stonehenge. I'm from London, Essex,
mhm,
but I live closer to Stonehenge now. I'm about an hour away. What
mhm.
a cool place. I mean, that
Oh,
is
it's
a cool
very
place.
cool.
Yeah. You can feel that energy there, I think.
I agree. I really did feel, it was an interesting magnetism that when you're walking around in that area. And I know that there's lots of people that talk about the energy centers and vortexes of the world, and that happens to be one of them. And
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
definitely notable when you go, the energy shift. You're right.
Yeah. It's a cool place. So you are a writer, a blogger, paranormal investigator, explorer. Where does it all start for you with the paranormal? How did you get into these crazy subjects?
So I've always been interested in the paranormal my whole life. And when I was younger, I lived in upstate New York. And that area is kind of, if you've ever heard of the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery and the story of the
Yes.
Headless Horseman, you know, it's
Oh wow, yeah.
it's very popular, the spooky culture up there. And, I grew up with that. And then when I moved to Florida with my family, we moved into a home that wasn't very old, but it happened to be inhabited by a spirit. And my parents still live there to this day, and they still interact once in a while, with whatever it is living there. And, just
Wow.
having those experiences at a young age really, it kind of pushed me to research more. I, of course, gobbled up every TV show that I could find, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and whenever I would have an opportunity to maybe go to a haunted location, I would always, want to take a tour or, what have you. And a couple years back, my husband bought me some ghost hunting equipment, just some basic stuff, and I started, tinkering around with it. And, by the more you get involved, the more you meet people,
Hmm.
and I landed up meeting some great other folks that were interested in the paranormal. And now I'm on a team with other people that like to investigate. So it's just really, it's come to a point where now I'm doing it all the time and I absolutely love it. And it's part of my daily life.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
love it.
Do you feel like the more you look into the paranormal, the more it looks back? Do
Oh,
you feel?
100%.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
I've
I've
found that.
actually found that a lot.
Yeah, because I've like yourself, I've always had experiences, and I do feel like since I started the podcast and since it sort of becomes your life, you're thinking about it, you're working on it every day, you do start to notice more things.
Yeah.
The paranormal looks back, man. It's scary.
Oh, it does. It really
Yeah.
does. And I've noticed myself, because I'm around it so often, I could walk into a room now and I can feel if there's a presence in the room. I could feel the difference between
Wow.
a room that has paranormal activity versus a room that doesn't. And you just become so sensitive to it. And I
Yeah.
think we're very much like, our bodies are in tune to these things. And once you start to really listen and you
hmm
start to pay attention, you'll notice the signs. So I think
Yeah.
everybody can really do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something that's built into us.
Yes.
Maybe like back in the days when we were the cavemen or whatever. I feel like it was something that it's part of us. And I feel like we probably lost that connection with whatever it is. And once you start looking into the paranormal, it starts to come back. You start to, I don't know, like another sense or something. I don't know.
I agree. I really do. And that's also with many other investigators that I've worked with and people I've met. That's a very common story that you hear from people that do this. And, it's not, I don't want to use the word psychic or, sensitive, but I do think that the average person, the more and more you know what to listen for and you know what to, look for on an investigation, you start to pick up
hmm
more nuanced things. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting part of investigating.
Yeah, for sure. So you're from one of the coolest places in the world, I would say, Sleepy Hollow. What a place, man. I mean, I've not actually been there, but I've watched a lot of videos and I'd love to go there one day. But what a cool place, man.
Yeah, the whole upstate New York area is gorgeous. And of course, the fall time of year, the autumn is
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
with the leaves. It's just incredible. And then we have, the beautiful winters and it's just a lovely place. And I do
Yeah.
miss it. I do miss, living in that part of the world, but now I have summer all year round, which is
That's
pretty
it.
neat too.
That's pretty cool. That's quite a cool trade. So what sort of things were you experiencing as a youngster in the haunted house? What sort of things were happening?
So my very first experience was very soon after my family moved into the house, and I was about, I want to say 13 or 14. I was home alone. I just gotten home from school. My parents were not home yet. And I was on the phone with one of my girlfriends, and we were just chatting, and I heard a sound, and it was a very distinct sound, especially if you're home alone, you hear a noise and you just, you have to stop and listen. And the noise was, if I could describe it, it sounded like something rolling on the tile floor. And I got really freaked out. I was on the phone with my friend and she told her mom, and her mom said, listen, can you, because it's the first floor house. She said, why don't you try to leave through the window if there's someone who broke into the house, and I will call the police and just go to a neighbor's house. And, if there's someone in there, maybe they broke in and, you know, so I left through the window. I went to my neighbor's and we waited for police to come, and we went into the house, and, my family had just moved and not everything was out of the boxes yet.
hmm
So there were still boxes all over the place. And what, they looked through the whole house and they didn't find anything. But looking in the kitchen, which has a tile floor, they did notice, I don't know if you know what a mortar and pestle looks like. It's like a little bowl and you use a little pestle to kind of, or the mortar to create spices and stuff.
hmm
And
Yeah.
this was marble, and the uh the little piece that you grind the spices with, it was underneath the table. But what was odd about that was the rest of the stuff in the kitchen was still packed away and still sealed up, but
hmm
somehow this was out of the box and it was under the table. So it was always like a weird thing that I thought, okay, how could that possibly happen? Because everything was still sealed up in the boxes. It still had tape on it. But, years later, my parents started to see things and hear things, and I always thought they were kind of messing with me, trying to just give me a little bit of a scare. But the most pronounced thing that happened in the house was I had a pair of brand new sneakers, and I had them right by my bedroom door. And when you left the bedroom, there was a long hallway. and along the hallway there was a restroom. So I was in the restroom washing up, getting ready for school or getting ready to go to bed. And I hear this loud sound that sounded like boom, 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 really, really loud. And I come out of the restroom. My father comes running around the corner. He's wide-eyed, worried what's happening. And my brand new sneaker that was sitting right by my door was on the floor. The laces were shredded, and my cat is now on the other side of the house and it's cowering in the corner. So we're looking at the shoe and we're going, well, maybe the cat got it stuck in his claws or in his teeth. You know, maybe something happened and he was trying to get it off, so he bumped the shoe and it hit the wall. But when we turned the lights on and we looked at the wall, there were two footprints on the wall above my head. If I had to stand, I'm 5'9". If I were
Hmm.
to stand and hit the shoe into the wall, there were two footprints on the wall. So even if the cat had somehow got it in his teeth or his claws, he would never be able to, with the force it would need to make a flat footprint on the wall, he would never be able to do that.
Hmm.
And what we think was this spirit or whatever did not like the cat in the house. So he was maybe trying to, scare the cat and
Yeah.
in turn scared us. And I've never been able to explain that. And that is the most pronounced thing I've ever seen in that house. But,
Wow.
everyone else that lived there, they've all actually seen an apparition. They've seen a person. I'm the only one, ironically, that never saw it with my own eyes. But
Wow.
yeah, go
What
figure,
was
right?
what was the apparition? What did it look like for the people that
They
saw it?
think it was an older person, and when my family moved into the home, there was a guest room in this home that had some items that were left behind that would indicate someone maybe perhaps was handicapped. There was a cane, there was some sort of like a like a kit for, maybe diabetes or something in the closet. There was in the restroom, they had like a handicap bar. So what we theorize is maybe somebody that lived there at some point maybe had a mother-in-law or a father-in-law maybe living in there, and maybe they pass in the home. I don't really know, but it because the property changed hands a few times. It was purchased, I want to say 3 or 4 times before my parents got it.
Hmm.
And the people that we purchased the house from never mentioned anything like that. So who knows? But they describe it. They don't know if it's a man or a woman, but they see it like an elderly person kind of hunched over. And my brother's seen it. Both my parents have seen it, and it's
Wow.
hard to
And they all
explain what
saw
it
the
is.
same thing. They all
Yeah,
explain. Wow.
they see the shadows walking around.
Hmm.
So
Wow. Was
pretty
it a
wild.
full-bodied apparition that they saw?
They saw a shadowy person, but they didn't see any features enough to distinguish whether it was a man or a woman.
Hmm.
But they described it as being a shadowy figure. And they've seen it walking around the restroom or the bedroom area where, the guest room area would be. So
Wow.
pretty crazy.
So the footprints that you saw,
Yes.
would they be possibly that entities, or was it like a different type of footprint?
I think it was just from the shoe. I think whatever it was picked up the shoe that was on the floor and just smashed it into the wall
Ah,
twice.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to, I don't know, maybe to scare the cat or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
really know, but
Whoa.
this was all because, I'm aging myself here. This was before cell phones, when I was in high school, I didn't have a cell phone. And at that time, I don't even know if I had a digital camera. And, so we weren't thinking, oh, let's take a picture of this,
Hmm.
but the only nice thing is I do have my dad to validate for me that that actually happened. And, he's a straight shooter kind of guy. So at least I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
But it was definitely an interesting situation. It did, and encourage my fascination with all of this. And it's one of the main things that kind of pushed me towards, getting into the idea of the paranormal, because I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was really cool.
Hmm.
I wasn't afraid of it,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to know what it was.
You're braver than me, that's for sure. So when you was younger, before that happened, you didn't experience anything as a really little kid? Because a lot of the times, I know a lot of the times people seem to forget those experiences, or nothing stands out.
No, not that I can recall. And it's interesting because my family, other relatives claim to have seen, deceased relatives, and I don't, not to my knowledge, but
Hmm.
It's, we've actually had some other family members claim they've had visitations, and it's kind of common in my family, but I've never personally seen it.
Yeah, interesting. But that experience that you had there with the footprint,
Mhm.
that was enough for you to know there's more going on in this world.
I believe I was always on, I kind of was into it, but then when I saw something like that and it couldn't be explained, it became, a different level for me.
Yeah.
And I think now, going into what I do now, I do go into it open-minded, and I always try to, just like I did then, try to debunk things. At that point I was looking at the cat's claws and trying to figure out how the cat could have done this. I still bring that kind of attitude to an investigation. I always try to see if there's an explanation.
Hmm.
But sometimes you really do capture evidence that you can't explain, and it falls under the umbrella of being paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I do think it's good to be skeptical just because you
Mhm.
have to be,
Yeah.
because like I'm the person that jumps to the paranormal. Every video I see, I believe at first. And then you sort of have to like, no, you have to keep a level head. So what was next for you? What happened next? What was the
So
next
I
experience?
think, the next thing really was I would always go on these, ghost tours, and I would always try to visit spooky places. But then when I was given the little, ghost hunting kit, I wanted to go out more and use it. So that was sort of what kind of pushed me, a little further into, finding some locations and looking into investigations, and that's sort of, the catalyst, I think, for me was getting those tools and saying, all right, now I have it. There's no excuse not to use it.
Hmm.
And I found my people. And I think that's really important, when it comes to investigating, is to, if you can, have a friend with you, because it really is not the best idea to investigate alone for so many different reasons. But
Hmm.
I think the main reason is, if you're in a dark place and, something happens to you, if you fall and get hurt, a lot of times when you're investigating, we're in the dark, and it's by having somebody with you, it's safer, and it's also good to validate your evidence, because if something happens, you have someone there that also may experience this with you. We try to keep cameras rolling so we have more than one angle. And I think that it also makes it more fun. So
Hmm.
I'm just so happy that I've been able to find some people that are interested in it just like I am. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you have an experience and you see something and then someone else sees the same thing,
yeah,
that you can't beat that because then you're like, okay, that's definitely not in my mind. I'm definitely not going crazy. Like we both saw that. I've had that before with experiences, and it does, it is cool when that happens, when two of you see something or three of you, whatever.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's fun, it's a lot of waiting around, but when something actually happens, it's a really cool moment. And,
Hmm.
a lot of people ask me, "Oh, don't you get scared? Don't you get scared?" And I really don't. I just get adrenaline. I
Yeah.
just get really excited. And
Never get a little bit scared. A little
I'm
bit.
not the fight or flight doesn't, it's me. I'm just gonna stand there and watch. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. But I don't, I really, I know it's crazy, but I mean, there have been some situations that kind of scared me a little bit, but nothing that ever made me run out of a location, or I've never
Mhm.
stopped investigating. But I mean, there have been some moments where I got a little freaked out, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's to be expected.
Oh, for sure. Have you seen anything? Have you seen any
I've
shadow
never seen a
figures?
ghost. I've never seen a ghost. I
Wow.
have recently, I did see a shadow person, my first time doing this for years and years. I was at a location in Miami, and this location, it's called the Gold Coast Railroad Museum, and
Hmm.
it's a museum that houses vintage locomotive trains, cars, all kinds of things. And I was there with my team, and we were investigating into the late hours, and we were walking from one end of the location to the other, and far out, I mean really far away, there is a light that is illuminating the restrooms. So we're walking towards this light, and we were the only people on the property, and the property is a secure property. It's actually very close to a prison and a military base. So you can rest assured there's nobody on this property that shouldn't be there.
Hmm.
So we were walking, we were with the manager, it was the manager and my team, and we're walking towards the bathrooms, and I saw a full figure. I could tell you he was at least 6'1", 6'2", very quick gait, and he just one, two, three steps and he was gone. He walked right in front of the light, so the light was blocked, and I saw his silhouette. I know it was a distance away, but I can tell it was a man. I can tell he was about that tall, average build, and he just walked right in front of the light. And when we got there, the manager went to investigate, thinking somebody might have been on the property. And there was no record of this on the cameras. There was no record of it anywhere. And
Wow.
it just, it's one of those things you can't explain. And I wish I would have been a little closer because I might have been able to see, more details of the face, but
Mhm.
it's the closest I've gotten so far.
Wow. That's still a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you saw that? Was it like I've seen something?
I almost fell over. I was so excited. And a lot of people actually report seeing this person walking around, and
Wow.
the staff at the museum actually, this is their theory. They think that it's one of the conductors for the trains that is perhaps, pacing around the property, maybe waiting to get on his train, but they see him walking back and forth and pacing. And a lot of people have seen him. So it's not something that just happened to me. It's an experience that, is shared among a lot of people. So that was kind of cool that I was the one to be able to see that. And I didn't know prior to seeing that shadow that this was a common phenomena.
Hmm.
So it was kind of neat, for them to
Yeah,
tell me that many people have seen it.
that is cool. Was it like your typical with a shadow figure, darker than the dark, they say? Was
Yeah.
that how? Yeah.
It blocked out the light. So if you picture the light is above the restrooms, there's, one door for the men's, one door for the women's. The light is in
Hmm.
the middle. And this figure walked in front and completely blocked out the light. And you could see, because everything is dark around it, when somebody walks in front of a light, you're just going to see a silhouette, and it
Hmm.
was all black. So yeah, it was pretty neat.
Wow, that's cool. Have you seen anything else like that, or was that the only time?
That's really the only thing I've seen with my own eyes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I've captured some things in photographs, but that's the only thing I've seen with my own eyes.
Interesting. What sort of things have you got in the photos?
So, a couple of years ago, I go to St. Augustine. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, St. Augustine, Florida. It's a
Hmm.
very old city. And before, the United States was even colonized, this was a fort for the Spanish. And, there's a castle, there are some old buildings from that era, and there are several very old graveyards. And this city is just the coolest. If you're ever in the States, you have to go. It's so awesome. And I go as often as I can. It's about, I would say, a 4 hour drive for me. And I was up at the time, I was up with a bunch of my friends, and one of the other friends suggested, hey, let's take a walking ghost tour. I'm always the one to suggest the spooky things, but it
Yeah.
wasn't my suggestion that one day. And so we're walking around and we're, on this tour. And as I always do, I just snap in a bunch of pictures. And, they tell you in the paranormal, it's a good practice to take 3 pictures at once, because sometimes you might see something manifesting in one, but not the other. And it's kind of cool, if you can kind of look through very similar shots and see an anomaly. So that's always what I do. And on this particular visit, I was standing next to the Huguenot Cemetery, which is a very, very old, very haunted cemetery. And I snapped 3 pictures in a row. And the first picture, there appears to be a man in a suit, like he has like a frilly suit and a top hat. He's kind of like a portly man, and he has a beard. It's very clear. And there's a woman standing next to him that's a little less clear. And she looks to be wearing a bonnet, like an old kind of like a lacy, maybe light blue or white bonnet, and she's got on a lacy white or light blue dress. She's a
Hmm.
little out of focus, but the man is very clear. So in the first picture, it's the 2 figures, and they're looking over as if they're looking towards us. The second picture, they're moving back. And in the third
Wow.
picture, they're gone.
Wow.
It is the coolest, the only really cool shot I've ever gotten like that. And
Wow.
it was
Is that
just
on the
ironic.
gram?
Yes, you have to scroll back quite a ways, but yes,
Yeah.
I can send it to you. It's on my Instagram. And
Wow.
I actually, I'll send it to you after this podcast if you want to check it out.
Yeah. Thank you. I've probably seen it, but wow, what a cool thing to capture, though.
It was cool. It was very cool. And of course, to see the movement of them
Hmm.
in and then in the third shot, they're just completely gone.
Was the man you say very clear?
Yeah, he's very clear. You can see his features of his face. He's kind of like, he's a little heavy set. He's got a beard, he's got a mustache, he's got a top hat on. It looks like an ascot maybe, or some other kind of frilly looking shirt. He's got on a suit. And the woman that's right next to him, you can still see the outline of her dress.
Hmm.
And you can see she's wearing whatever the material is for her dress, it's the same material for the hat. But she's not very clear. She's more wispy looking. He's
Hmm.
clear. And you can tell they're not solid people because it is slightly translucent, but clear enough to see the features of the
Wow.
face. Yeah.
Wow. And did you realize straight away that you'd captured that?
No, I actually, so the next day we were all leaving and I piled into a car with four of my girlfriends and I was in the back seat. Thankfully, I didn't have to drive that time. And I was just scrolling through my pictures. And what I do, and I always recommend other people do this, it, it's easy on an iPhone. I just pinch and zoom and look into all corners of the photo and just see if I find anything weird. And I was doing that. And when I found it, I almost freaked out in the back seat. I'm going, guys, you got to look at this. You got to look at this. And I was
Wow.
showing everybody in the car and they all were pretty shocked because it's pretty clear. And, you know, I've had people say, well, perhaps there were other people on the side of the cemetery that were peeking over. But the thing is about the cemetery is it's a protected cemetery. You can't go inside of it.
Hmm.
And there's no way that that could be a real person pulling a prank because you can see through them. So it can't be an
Yeah.
actor or a
And you
person
probably
trying to,
would have seen, you would have seen,
right.
you would have seen, if there was movement where you're looking, you probably would have seen them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's something I find interesting. People are filming a lot, taking a lot of pictures, and they don't often see these things until they look back and I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
Man, have you caught anything else like that? Or is
Not photos, no, but for me, what I do when I investigate is I love equipment. I love being able to show proof of paranormal with some sort of measurement, whether it be a recorder or a electronic, device such as a spirit box. I love having those little devices with me. So whenever
hmm
I'm on an investigation, I'm oftentimes using those. So I will capture evidence in the form of, electromagnetic field disturbances, temperature changes, all kinds of things along those lines. So
hmm
I try to, create, because the thing is, if you have an experience, there's nothing wrong with just having the experience, but if you can have the experience and back that experience up with more than one measurement, that
hmm
you can show that there was a drop in temperature in the room and you can see the exact temperature drop. If you can see there's a disturbance in electromagnetic field and you can see the exact amount of EMF that was projected, you can see static energy changes, you can see all of those things. It gives you a more multifaceted approach to proof, really.
hmm
And for me, that's just become kind of the goal with all of this
Yeah.
is I just want to find out as much as I can, because this is one of those fields that there are no definitive answers and anybody can be an investigator. There's no professionals in this. And you might be the one that cracks the code on what is going on with the afterlife. We
Yeah.
don't really
Can you
know.
imagine that? Can you imagine if someone could crack that? Do you think we ever will? Do you think we ever will? Do you think we can in this realm?
Yeah, I do think it's possible. And I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime, but I do think it's possible. And I think that more and more conversations are being had where, we're normalizing the paranormal. And
Hmm.
maybe 20 years ago, people would look at you like you had two heads if you said you were interested in paranormal. But nowadays, there's becoming more and more acceptance. And because everybody has, one of these in their pockets, and we're all capturing so many things now, more in this era than ever before, because everyone either has a phone in their pocket, they have a Ring camera on their doorbell, or they have some sort of dash camera in their car. And more evidence is coming out that cannot be disputed. You just
Hmm.
can't dispute all of it. And I'm sure a lot of evidence out there is faked. I completely understand that and I recognize that, but not all of it is.
Hmm.
And I just think that at some point, once we start understanding more about, maybe how our reality works, because there are a lot of people out there that are doing research that are starting to have conversations about time and space and maybe time not being linear and maybe, our the veil of our reality is different than we thought. And, you know, maybe we might have answers, but I do think there's something there. And I think that it's really interesting to have conversations with people and, talk about different theories because it does affect everybody, I think.
Hmm.
And, either, if you have experience yourself and you want to validate it for yourself, or if you're just interested in what happens when we die, or if you hadn't, if you want to have an experience because maybe you're the skeptic and you want to see it for yourself. There are so many reasons why people get interested in this topic. And I think the more people that are interested, the more chances we have at discovering more answers.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like more people that are open and honest with their experiences as well.
Yes.
Like the more people that talk
Honesty
about
is the
it,
key.
100%. Yeah. The more people that talk about it, share their experiences. Like the amount of times I've talked to someone that's told me they don't really believe in the paranormal. And then after like a little while of talking to them, telling them something you might have experienced, then they're like, oh, there was this one time. And then they tell you this wild story that you're like, how can you not be a believer? Because that is wild. And I've had that so many times because so many
Yeah.
people have experiences.
I think more people have experienced this than don't.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
everybody, I mean, most people I've talked to have an experience. And if they don't have their own experience, they know someone who has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rare to meet someone that's never experienced anything.
Yeah.
There's always, yeah. So how often are you out investigating?
Well, on a busy month, maybe 3 times. On a not so busy month, maybe once.
Hmm.
But I just got back, I was telling you earlier I just got back from the UK. And when I was there for about 2 weeks. And I did something, in the spooky realm every day. I was there. I either was at a cemetery photographing things or I did a couple of investigations when I was there. I investigated a gin palace in London. I got a chance to investigate a haunted manor where I stayed overnight in Donington. I don't know if you've heard of that area.
Nice. I
And,
should know. I'm
and
not sure.
it's outside of Nottingham.
Okay.
And I just, I everywhere I went, I had some of my equipment and I just tried to investigate as much as I could. And, I just think that, having an opportunity to be in a place like that where there's so much history and there's so many things to explore, it was such a treat because, where I live, Florida is a very new state in the United States of America. And really it only became super populated after the 1960s. So we don't really have a ton of old buildings. There are some speckled here and there, St.
Hmm.
Augustine, some older areas around Miami, but I would say overall it's very young and we don't have as many opportunities as, in the UK and everything is haunted there.
Yeah.
So it was just a really fun experience.
Yeah. Did you have any spooky action while in the UK? Anything happen that stands out?
Well, I got a chance to explore this really cool gin palace and a gin palace, which I found out this was new to me before I visited London, but a gin palace was considered the first bar. And,
Oh, wow.
over time, these gin palaces became really popular and the way that they designed them was really interesting, very ornate, very, fancy. Everything was a lot of mirrors, a lot of gold. And this particular tavern, it's called the Viaduct Tavern. It was originally built atop a jail, and it's seen a lot of different eras of war and all kinds of stuff. And I happened to run into, I found a YouTube video online, so I knew I wanted to go. I had it on my list of things I wanted to do, and I just figured I would go have get a gin there and just hang out. And I was talking to one of the bartenders and I said, hey, I'm from the United States and I'm a paranormal investigator. I heard this place is haunted. And she said, you know about us? And I said, absolutely. And I said, I watched this video and I learned all about your history. And I said, there was a bullet hole over there from World War One, and there's, something over here. And she's looking at me and she's going, no one knows about this. You're one of the only people.
Wow.
And she said, do you want to come downstairs? And I said, sure. Like, what could we do downstairs? And she said, there's an actual jail cell still downstairs where the bar was built over this original jail. And what they would do is I think it was called the Compter prison. They would take prisoners in there, but then they would bring them to these jail cells because they were, some of these prisoners they were afraid would be lynched, or, the crowd would, come in and break in. So they would put them in these jail cells down below. And then the day of their execution, they would march them out down the street, and there was a gallows. And now the gallows are like, it's like a fountain now, but it used to be a public gallows. But this jail cell was really interesting because she said a lot of bad people spent their last night on earth in this jail cell contemplating what was about to happen to them. And there's a lot of
Wow.
intense energy down there. So she brought me down there. I got to see, this whole cell that's still around. There was actually still a noose, one of the original, like a hanging noose from the ceiling in there.
Wow.
And I did not get anything on my equipment, but I will just say walking in there, it was very surreal because you walk in and you're walking in from a kitchen into this space, and it's an immediate feeling. The feeling changes. You walk from, feeling normal, feeling good, and then you walk into that stall and it just hits you, like it feels like a blanket on top of you, very heavy energy. And I was in there for a few minutes, and I was, using my meters and seeing if I felt anything. And the only thing I noticed was I felt like a rush of cold air. And I asked the girl, I said, is there any air conditioning down here? She said, no, we don't even have any air conditioning at all in this area. The only air conditioning is upstairs. And there was, it's just a cell. There's no windows in there. There's no windows downstairs at all. And it was
Wow.
it was pretty cool. It was really neat. And so I got to, kind of explore around a little bit in between her customers, and she went back upstairs, and I got to kind of explore a little bit. But it was
Wow. That's
a very
cool.
cool experience. I'm really
Yeah.
happy that I started asking questions because
Yeah. Well, that's
I
the
never
way.
thought I would have been able to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. That's what's cool. And then people that are interested, like obviously that girl was interested in it as well. And that's
Mhm.
cool. Did she see anything? Do you know? If that girl seen
She told
anything?
me, yes, she told me she's had a few experiences. She said that one time she was listening to music on her phone, and she might have had the volume up while she was stacking some glasses and other things. And she said that, she's like, oh man, I wish I could, turn the volume up a little bit. And she said that the volume instantly went up. And she said that things got thrown a few times down there when, as she was walking down the stairs, she would hear things get thrown. And there's nobody there. And it was a very small space, it's more of a storage room really than anything.
Hmm.
And you would be able to easily see if there was somebody hiding down there because it's not a big space. And she said that she never saw anybody down there. So
Wow.
pretty neat.
So that feeling you get when you go into locations like that and you get that vibe, you get that feeling. You said you feel like that's getting stronger.
Hmm.
How would you explain that? Like, what is it? Just a knowing?
You
Because
just
I know
it
that
almost
feeling.
feels like it's like the air is different, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense. When you're in a climate, I can only say this because I'm out in the Miami area. It's very humid here.
Yeah.
It's very hot and humid. If you're in humidity, it feels heavier, and if
Hmm.
you're in a non-humid area, the air seems a little thinner, right? So if you go into a room that feels normal, and then you walk into a humid room, you're going to feel that thickness of the air a little bit more, and it's kind of like that. And when I walk into one room and into a heavy room, I will feel like the air, like there's not a lot of air and it's kind of thick, is the only way I could really put that to words. And
Hmm.
I felt that in that jail cell. It felt really dark, actually.
Yeah. That's cool. Scary, but cool.
Yeah,
Do you get worried about bringing this stuff home?
I do. And I have. And it's
You
happened to me.
have.
Yes, it
Oh
has
my
happened to
gosh.
me.
You got to tell us about that.
Yeah. It wasn't, it really, it was scary, but I'm very lucky in the sense that it wasn't anything negative. But the long story short of it, I was investigating with my paranormal team in a location that we are at all the time. We actually host events for this museum. We do fundraising for them. And, you know, we go there every once in a while just to investigate. And we were there. This was a place I've been dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And that particular night, there was a new exhibit in the museum. And I think some of the objects from that exhibit might have had some energy attached. And so the exhibit was about the building of the railroad. And the museum itself sits right on the railroad track. So this was, an appropriate exhibition. And my team and I went into this room with these objects, and I immediately felt something odd. And what I felt was it felt like a vibration on my stomach. Almost
Hmm.
as if you have your phone kind of tucked into your jeans or tucked into your pants a little bit, and maybe it's touching you and it's, get a text or something. I
Hmm.
felt a vibration and I didn't say anything. We kept on investigating. And one of the other girls said, I feel a vibration on my arm. And I said, I felt the same thing on my stomach a minute ago. And she said, yeah, it felt like my phone was resting on my arm and I felt a vibration, a hard vibration. And that was the exact same feeling that I had felt. So we investigate the whole night, whatever, everything was great. And I get home, my husband and he came with me towards the end of that investigation. He brought everybody pizza because he's a really nice guy. And so we had pizza with everybody. The two of us went home and we both showered up. We went to bed and I woke up in a dream. Okay, so this was a dream. It wasn't real life. I woke up in the dream, but I looked around and it was very lucid. I was in my room and I'm looking around and I have this feeling like someone's in the room. So I look over at my husband, he's sleeping, and I get out of bed. It's very realistic, very lucid. And I start walking around the bed and I see a man. The man is crouched down next to my husband's side. He's looking up at me. He's got his hands like this and he's looking up at me. And he looked scared, is the best way I can describe it. He was wearing either his clothing was brown or it might have been so dirty from working that it looked brown, but he had on a brown button-up shirt and brown pants. And he was bald. He was probably in his mid to late 40s. He had sweat all over his brow, and his eyes were just very wild looking, not scary, menacing, but just nervous. Maybe he didn't know where he was. It was the kind of the vibe I got from him. And
Hmm.
in the dream, I wanted to scream, "Get out!" And you know how sometimes in your dream you want to say something and you can't get it out? You're like, "Get out!" You can't
Hmm.
open your mouth. So I
Hmm.
wanted to scream that, and I could not get the words out in my dream. And of course, it's such an intense dream. I wake up in my bed in real life, and I sit up and I look over at my husband, and he's still sleeping. And I'm sitting up going, "Oh my God," my heart's pounding. And I smell what smells like body odor, which is pretty gross. And I think we all as humans know what that smells like.
Hmm.
And I smelled it and I'm like, ooh, and I thought about it and I'm going, the guy I just saw in my dream was covered in sweat. And this was a distinct smell that I smelled. And of course, like I said, I came home, we showered, it wasn't us, but I as the investigator does, I kind of reached over and, sniffed him, sniffed myself. It wasn't us. We
Yeah.
don't keep laundry in our room either. We have a laundry room.
Hmm.
So I get out of bed. I'm freaked out now. I'm not going back to sleep. I walk around the room. I don't see anything. I walk around my house because I'm trying to just see if I can get another whiff of where this is coming from because maybe there's an open window, maybe something explainable, but there's nothing. I can't smell it anymore. It was like instantly it was in front of me and then it was gone. And it was
That's
really weird.
wild.
So of course, I was really freaked out by this. I decided to sage my house. I opened up all my windows. I burned some sage and I just said out loud, hey, I'm sorry if you followed me, but you're not welcome to stay. You have to leave. And I was very calm about it. And I've never had any problems since. I've never seen it since, but it was a very unsettling thing. And it came literally out of nowhere because, like I said, I've been to that location so many times. I've never had that happen to me. And I do think that whatever it was, I think he was just confused. I don't think he meant any harm in any way at all. I think that he just attached to me somehow and he was wondering where he was. And
Wow.
it was pretty spooky. It was
That
pretty spooky.
is. That
Hmm.
is. Because before I started looking into this sort of stuff, I used to think dreams were just dreams. I didn't think but there just seems to be a lot more to dreams, especially
Yeah.
dreams like that, where you say
Hmm.
that it was lucid, it felt very real. I really do think there's something to dreams, and
Hmm.
that's wild.
Yeah, it was pretty
Wow.
cool. But I mean, of course, I find this interesting. I know that would probably, scare the pants off somebody else, but
Yeah.
and I was worried about it. I wasn't, I didn't take it, I didn't not worry about it. But I think that in a lot of these situations, it could be accidental. You might accidentally bring something home.
Hmm.
And I've actually heard from other people, similar stories of something, and they were able to easily remove it. Um, it happens.
Yeah.
And, I had a friend actually not too long ago. We were on an investigation and so there was three girls in their car, right? I went in a separate car. So it was three girls and they started pulling out of the parking lot and they stopped. And I saw them turn on the light inside the car and I called them from my car and I said, "Are you guys okay? Is everything all right?" And they said, "Oh, everything's fine. We're good. No worries." So I left and my girlfriend called me not long after and she said, "Well, I have to tell you what happened. The reason why we stopped the car was because when we all started driving away, we were all wearing our seatbelts and the seatbelt light in my car went on saying that someone in the back seat wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And there was only one person in the back seat and she was wearing a seatbelt. So that meant that there
Whoa.
might have been someone else sitting in the seat next to her. And so they stopped the car, they opened the doors and they said, "Okay, you have to leave." They closed the door, they started driving and the alarm didn't go off.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool. I mean, that's scary as well.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I think it's
especially
kind of neat.
it is neat. But if you was on your own and you felt because I've talked to people that have seen things in the back of their car coming home from investigations and stuff like that. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But fascinating.
Oh, it's
So,
fascinating, 100%. Difficult question, but what do you think is going on with the parent? What do you think the paranormal is with in regards to ghosts? What do you think they are?
so I have a, I'll say a complex answer to that. I do
That's
think there
cool.
are a couple different entities or there's explanations for what we're experiencing. I do think there has some weight to the idea that there is residual energy, residual hauntings. And in a residual haunting, it's not intelligent. It's almost as if something, for whatever reason, gets imprinted in the space. There's actually a theory to this. It's very popular. I believe it was published in the 1970s, but it's called the stone tape theory. I believe
Hmm.
it's from the UK. And in this research, researchers found that in some locations, for whatever reason, certain events can be imprinted within a space, and they replay constantly as if they're on a video reel. And maybe every night at 2 a.m., you hear footsteps on the stairs, and you can't explain that. They're not footsteps that are you're able to interact with, but you hear them every night at 2 a.m. And this idea is an interesting phenomenon because in this situation, you can't really interact, you can't really change it, you can't really move them on. It's just something that's going to keep happening in the space. And there are some theories as to why that is. And one of the main reasons is maybe perhaps the foundation or the wood where that built in this space might have somehow absorbed this energy. And certain foundations that have things like quartz and limestone, the quartz and the limestone act as conductors for energy. Wood can also hold on to energy as well. If you strum a guitar and you hear that sound that kind of resonates, energy can also kind of be affected by porous wood
Hmm.
and it might soak into it, might become part of it. Who knows how exactly it works? But in older homes, you notice older houses are easily haunted, maybe not so much your brand new condo built in 2020, and that might have something to do with the materials used to build it. Back in the day, they use all the good stuff. Nowadays, they use a lot of cheap stuff. So maybe that has something to do with it, is the materials. Now, there's also sentient beings, maybe spirits that are either trapped or choose to stay or maybe can come and go. That's to be debated. But there are intelligent spirits that are here for whatever reason and will and do interact with people. And this is an interesting phenomena because if you're able to have a conversation with a recorder and you're able to ask a question and get an intelligent response to a specific question, that is interesting. And I think that is something that should be researched.
Hmm.
On some investigations, I don't always ask the same questions. I don't always say, "Is this a man or a woman? Are you You know, did you live here? Did you work here? You know, you got to come up with interesting, creative questions.
Hmm.
One of the questions that I ask a lot, you know, lighthearted things. Do you like to dance? Do you like music? Do you like ice cream? Because sometimes maybe the spirit wants to reminisce on something they actually care about. And
Hmm.
maybe they want to talk about their favorite kind of ice cream. And you'll get better responses if you ask interesting questions like that.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, some people believe the spirit can be trapped. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't know if that's true or not, but there is something to be said with a theory that if someone dies in a way that's traumatic, maybe they don't know that they're dead, or perhaps, you know, they don't understand what happened to them, or they have unfinished business. Maybe they're trapped. That could happen. But there's also evidence that people choose to stay where they are. Maybe they're happy where they are. Maybe this was somebody's house that they lived their entire life in and they're not ready to leave. You know,
Hmm.
and not every spirit wants to go. And that I think that's okay too. And then, of course, you know, you have your interesting, you know, there might be a spirit that can move around. One of the most famous cases that I've come across is the author Mark Twain.
Hmm.
I visited his home in Connecticut, and he has, if you look into the Mark Twain story, there are so many different properties that he was associated with that he visits, and there are, you know, people that have captured evidence of him in his home, in certain studios that he's worked at, in certain buildings where he might have, you know, visited, but he moves around. How is that possible? So it's an interesting thing, and I think that it's not just a cut and dry what is a ghost, what is not a ghost.
Hmm.
You know, we're
It's
you
a
know, I don't
mixture.
think we're alone. I
It
think
could
that
be a
there's
mixture of all these things.
it could be a mixture of all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, there are also, you know, energies that were never human,
Hmm.
and I don't think they're quite as dominant as the TV and movies would like to make you think, but I do think that they're there. I think that if we believe in the light, we also have to recognize that there are some dark things out there too.
Hmm.
And, you know, that's also another possibility.
Yeah. Have you had any experiences with the darker side of things?
Um, you know, I've been around some locations that were had some negative energy, but I've never really been on one that I've been uncomfortable.
Hmm.
The I'm also not someone who's going to go to certain locations that have bad reputation. I personally, I'm not trying to rattle that cage.
Hmm.
The places I go are usually lighter. One of the locations that I'm at all the time has an old schoolhouse, and there are children that interact, and you know they're happy and they want to, you know, we've gotten all kinds of giggling and laughter and, you know,
Yeah.
game playing with devices. I'm more into that. I don't want to be around somebody who was a murderer or,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
it's not my cup of tea,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Children go scare me though. I don't know what it is. That scares me. Has your husband had any experiences?
Just when he's been on a few investigations with me, he's not really, he doesn't love it, but he
Mhm.
puts up with it because he
He
knows
has
that I
no
like
choice. Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So it doesn't worry him that you're going to bring something back and there's going to be a
He
man
doesn't
sitting
love
by
it.
him.
He doesn't love it. And then I started collecting, you know, creepy objects and
Oh
things,
no.
and he's like, "Oh God, you're gonna bring a haunted object into our house." And I go, "Well, you don't believe in it, so what does it matter? Right? You don't believe in ghosts, so why are you worried if I'm bringing home a haunted object?"
Yeah.
But but you know, it's funny. We were actually in St. Augustine a few years ago, and we were doing an investigation, a private investigation there, and he had an experience that he still says he's skeptical, but it was enough to shake him. We were in a house, and he saw it was a device that plays music if you move in front of it. It's like a motion sensor,
Hmm.
and something set it off, and we were the only ones in the room. And then he asked if they would do it again, and they did it again. And it was just it was kind of spooky, and he kind of, you know, he wanted to leave after that. So, but he's
Ah,
still skeptical, which is
yeah.
funny to me.
Yeah. I've got family members that are skeptical and I know they've had experiences and they're like, yeah, they just don't want to accept it, I think, because you can't control the paranormal. We can't control
Mhm.
it. Things happen and yeah, very interesting. Have you had any experiences with UFOs or cryptids or
Mm-mm.
anything like that?
Cryptid, I have a story, but UFOs, no. I
Oh,
don't
can we
want to
have,
have any UFO stories, to be honest with you.
yeah.
I want nothing to do with that. I think it's great, and all power to anybody who wants to do that research, but it is not something I want to poke.
Yeah.
When it comes to the cryptids, I do have a fun story. It's short, but I want to say I think I was a junior in high school, and so just to paint the picture, I was in a pickup truck and I had a friend driving. I was in the middle because I was the little one, and then there was another friend on the right side. So we were all three of us in the front cab of the pickup truck. Now we're driving down a road. On one side, it's all like elderly communities, homes, in our area there are certain communities you have to be 55 years or older to live there. So the
Hmm.
elderly, and then there's on the other side of the road there's just a long waterway. And this road is very long and there's just nothing on it really. It's just the waterway. Sometimes people go fishing over there and then this community, and you never really see people out and about because they stay in their house. So we're driving down this road and it's about the sun is setting. It's at dusk. And we're driving along and I see something in the distance from the side of the road where the waterway is. Okay. And to describe it to you, it looked like a man on all fours running across the road. Now, I immediately thought maybe it's a dog, maybe it's a big dog. But now, if you were to bend down and touch the floor, your hands on the floor, your feet on the floor, your
Hmm.
back is going to arch up, right?
Yeah.
Your butt is going to be higher in the air. It's not going to look like a dog. It's clear if it's a human doing that. And that's what it looked like. And this thing ran across the road. Mind you, it's not super bright, it's dusk. But this figure ran from the side of the road from the waterway all the way to the other side where the neighborhood is. And when I tell you this thing moved very quickly, so if I were to get on all fours and try to run across the road, it would look very awkward. But this thing moved fast. And I'm just sitting there and I didn't say anything. And I look over at my friend Tim and I said, "Did you see that?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah." And I asked my friend Colin, I'm like, "Did you see that?" Hmm. And we
Whoa.
didn't want to stop because, I mean, you couldn't blame us. I mean, it's kind of scary, especially as a kid,
Yeah.
you know, and there's just nothing out there. There's nowhere for this thing to really hide. It went just across the road into this neighborhood. And for a long time I thought, well, maybe it was a crazy person, but I just don't know what would possess somebody to I can't figure it out. And the only thing I can think
Wow.
of in our area, we have something that's like our own Bigfoot in this area of the country. It's called skunk ape.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
there's actually a skunk ape research center not far from where I live,
Oh
and in
man.
the Everglades. And I don't know. It might have been a cryptid, or it could have been. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is it's an insane person, but it just
That's
was too weird. It was so
yeah.
weird,
Can
and it
you
was
remember what
dark.
color it was? Can you remember like if it
It
had
was dark.
hair or
No, I mean, it was so dark. It was kind of silhouetted. Either the person was wearing all dark clothing, or they were dark fur, or I mean, it looked like maybe the best I can describe it is like if somebody was in like a long black sleeve shirt and long black pants. I mean, it was dark. So, and it ran across the road so quickly.
Mhm.
It's it was just very strange.
Wow.
So maybe it was a cryptid, maybe it was a crazy person. The world will never know, but
Both are pretty scary if you think about it. If
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
person running on all fours. But you say it was like a natural movement. So this thing
It
was
was just it looked as if it was used to doing that.
yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Gina,
wild,
I
right?
wasn't expecting a Bigfoot encounter on this one tonight. But I'm glad I asked that.
Yeah.
Wow. What's your thoughts on Bigfoot and Sasquatch?
So I am one I think that if there's so much evidence out there, it's hard to say something isn't real when there's so much evidence. But the biggest thing for me is the lack of bones and the lack of physical evidence. So, you can find a footprint, you might see a video, but there's really no hard evidence in the sense of a skeleton or anything like that. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of shows, and one of the theories that was brought up at some point was perhaps that these creatures are actually living in another dimension, and somehow the veil is thin enough between theirs and ours so that they can travel in and out. And
Hmm.
if that's true, that would make sense of why we can never find their bones or never capture them. But it's interesting because some of the evidence, it's just I don't think you can really fake some of the stuff that has come out recently. There's a show called Paranormal Caught on Camera. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
love that
seen
show.
that.
Yeah,
And there was
100%.
one video from Russia, and it shows something walking through a desolate forest. And this is captured, I think it was captured from above, maybe on some sort of helicopter camera or whatever it was.
Hmm.
But this thing is walking through a an inhabited forest, and they can kind of guesstimate how tall it was as it's walking, and they can compare that size to the trees and the other recognizable landscape, and it looks like this thing is like 12 feet tall. So it couldn't even really be a person if somebody was playing a prank. And why would somebody be out in the middle of a dense forest doing that? How would they know that the plane was going to go across and see that? It's just
Yeah.
it's too many what ifs for there to be somebody out there pranking. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of that, we're seeing more of it now with dash cams. So many people have dash cams on their car, and we're seeing things on ring cameras now because everybody has a ring camera in front of their door. It's just more, and also the hunters that have those wood cameras that are out there hunting and looking for deer or whatever they're trying to hunt. And there's just so much evidence. So it's hard for me because I want to see proof, but there's no hard proof yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. And these things are reported all around the world.
Hmm.
Oh man, I didn't think we was going to get into cryptids tonight, but I'm so glad we did. Wow, it's one of my favorite subjects. Gina, I have loved talking to you tonight. Thank
I
you
had a
so
great
much
time.
for coming on. Can
Thank
you tell the
you.
listeners where they can find you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram and TikTok at She Hunts. And my paranormal team, if you'd like to stop by and check that out, is at Afterlife All Stars. We do lots of fundraisers locally, and we post a lot of videos about how you can get started ghost hunting. So if you're interested, check us out. And, feel free to shoot me a message if you have any questions about ghost hunting. I love to talk about it. And thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. They need to check out your Instagram. It's absolutely awesome. I've been following you for a long time. Super interesting.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for coming on. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, share it where you can. That is a great way to support us. We'll be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Thank you very much, Gina.
Thank you.